Your cat is not a picky drinker. Your cat is biologically incapable of knowing they are thirsty until the damage has already begun. There is a 9-year-old orange and white cat named Oliver who does something every single morning that his owner, a grief counselor named Ethan, has spent years quietly worrying about. Oliver walks past his water bowl without stopping. He always has. Ethan keeps a handwritten list of his clients' names in his shirt pocket, even on days off, because he learned early that forgetting a name is its own kind of loss. He is a man who pays close attention to the things he loves. And yet, like most cat owners, he has no idea that Oliver's indifference to water is not a mood. It is a malfunction, one that was designed 10,000 years before either of them was born, to save a life in the desert, and is slowly destroying one in a kitchen. Here is what the science actually says, and it will change the way you see your cat forever. In most mammals, the body is extraordinarily alert to dehydration. The moment blood begins to thicken, even by a fraction of a percent, pressure-sensitive cells in the brain fire an urgent signal, and thirst becomes impossible to ignore. It is an immediate, almost violent craving for water. But feline neurobiology does not work this way. Research suggests that a cat's thirst response is governed by a significantly higher trigger point than nearly any other domestic animal. Their brain will not register the conscious urge to drink until dehydration has already reached a severe, pathological level. By the time Oliver is actually thirsty, his body has been quietly water-starved for hours. And here is where the modern tragedy begins. Dry kibble contains somewhere between 6 and 10% moisture. The living prey a cat's body was designed to eat contains over 70%. When a cat lives exclusively on dry food, their suppressed thirst drive simply does not compensate for the deficit. It was never built to. Total daily water intake drops far below what the kidneys need to function safely. The filtration rate falls, waste accumulates in the blood, and the kidney tissue, forced to filter an increasingly concentrated, waste-laden fluid day after day, begins to sustain damage it cannot repair. Studies indicate that chronic kidney disease is now one of the most common serious illnesses in domestic cats, affecting a significant portion of middle-aged and older cats. The condition is largely silent until 2/3 of kidney function has already been destroyed, at which point it is entirely irreversible. Veterinary researchers have directly linked this epidemic to chronic, diet-induced fluid deprivation. What the pet food industry has spent decades calling a cat's natural preference for dry food is, in physiological reality, a slow and invisible organ failure that begins not with a dramatic event, but with a water bowl that gets walked past every single morning. Think about your own cat right now. Think about how often you genuinely watch them drink. Think about the bowl you refill, the water you set out, and the quiet assumption that they will drink when they need to. That assumption, however well-intentioned, is based on a biology that simply does not apply to them. But to understand why this is happening, we have to go somewhere most cat science never goes. We have to go back, much further back than you might expect. The domestic cat is not a companion animal that evolved alongside humans in fields and farmhouses. They are, genetically speaking, almost identical to the African wildcat, a solitary, precise, ruthlessly efficient predator, shaped by some of the harshest desert environments on Earth. The Middle East, 10,000 years ago. Scorching heat, arid, unyielding landscape, and almost no standing water anywhere. Survival in that environment demanded a radical evolutionary decision: abandon the need for rivers and streams entirely. The feline body became a closed system, engineered to extract every drop of moisture it needed from a single source: the body of its prey. A mouse is approximately 75% water by mass, A small bird is similar. This biological moisture, saturated with electrolytes, amino acids, and the precise mineral balance a feline body requires, was not a supplement to hydration. It was hydration. The feline kidney evolved never needing to process tap water because the animal was never supposed to find any. When Oliver was a kitten and first walked past his water bowl, he was not being difficult. He was doing precisely what 10,000 years of genetic memory told him to do. His body expected to eat its water. The bowl on the floor was, to everything encoded inside him, irrelevant. To manage life in an environment where fresh water was essentially absent, the feline kidney developed into something extraordinary. A remarkable biological engine capable of concentrating urine to levels almost no other mammal can achieve. Deep inside the kidney, microscopic structures called the loops of Henle, which in cats are exceptionally long and deeply embedded, act like aggressive ringing machines, pulling every possible drop of fluid back into the bloodstream before it is lost. A healthy cat's urine is so concentrated it would be considered dangerously abnormal in a human. This is not a flaw. It is a miracle of desert engineering. But here is what no one tells you. That extreme concentrating ability is an emergency protocol. It is the backup system. It is what the desert kidney does when it has no choice. It was never designed to be the primary mode of daily operation. When a cat eats dry kibble every single day, those same microscopic structures are forced to run at maximum capacity, around the clock, indefinitely. The fluid passing through the bladder becomes so concentrated, so supersaturated with minerals, that crystals begin to form. Sharp, microscopic stones that scratch and inflame the bladder wall. Obstructions that can block the urethra within hours, creating a medical emergency. A condition called feline lower urinary tract disease, painful, costly, and almost entirely preventable with adequate hydration. Ethan has never heard of feline lower urinary tract disease. He has never needed to. Oliver has always seemed fine. But seeming fine is, for a cat, entirely different from being fine. And somewhere between Oliver's morning walk past the water bowl and his evening meal of dry kibble, a quiet crisis continues, one cellular layer at a time. There is one more part of this story that most people never learn, and once you hear it, you will never look at your cat's water bowl the same way again. Your cat cannot see still water. This is not a metaphor. It is an optical fact. A cat's eyes are built for one thing above all others, detecting fast movement in near darkness. They are magnificent at this. But this specialization comes with a cost. Their near-field vision is poor, and the anatomy of their face creates a genuine blind spot directly below their nose, precisely where a water bowl sits on the floor. To your cat's eyes, a perfectly still, transparent bowl of water is not a shimmering pool. It is, for all practical purposes, invisible. An empty space where a hazard might be hiding. Think about the last time you watched your cat paw at the water before drinking. You probably smiled. It looked quirky, almost funny. But what they were actually doing was running a sensory analysis. The paw measures viscosity. Is this thicker than it should be? Has something decayed in here? The paw locates the surface, maps the depth, and confirms that what is in the bowl is actually fluid. It is not a quirk, it is an audit. And the fact that they need to perform it at all tells you everything about how poorly the standard water bowl serves them. Feline hearing extends to frequencies nearly 3 times higher than human ears can process. At those frequencies, a cat can hear the microscopic pop of a single bubble breaking at the surface of a stream. Research suggests they respond most reliably to moving water that produces intermittent pulses, the sound of a spring, the rhythm of a small current. Because that acoustic signature, in the wild, meant something crucial. The water is fresh. The water is moving. The water is safe. Stagnant water in the desert was almost always contaminated. Biologically, silence meant danger. The still bowl on your kitchen floor is not just hard to see. It sounds, to your cat's ancient ears, like exactly the kind of water that should not be trusted. And then there is the bowl's location. Scientists studying feline behavioral ecology have described what appears to be a deep-seated instinct and aversion, rooted in evolutionary survival, to avoid drinking from any water source near a food source. The reasoning, when you consider the environment these animals came from, is almost painfully logical. A kill, in the desert heat, begins to decay within hours. The water near a carcass is contaminated water. The water that smells like food is the water that will make you sick. Placing a cat's water bowl directly next to their food bowl, as nearly every product photo, every feeding guide, every well-meaning pet owner does, triggers exactly this ancient alarm. The water smells like the kill. The water smells like death. The brain says, do not drink it. This is not a personality quirk. This is a survival instinct, millions of years old, firing in perfect working order inside a cat who lives in a safe, warm home with a devoted owner who has no idea any of this is happening. Ethan moved Oliver's water bowl to the other side of the kitchen last year after reading something online. He was not sure it would make a difference. Within a week, Oliver was drinking noticeably more. Ethan thought it was a coincidence. It was not. Now comes the part where this stops being a science lesson and starts being something else entirely. We brought these animals into our homes. We asked them to eat crackers shaped like stars. We placed their water in bowls they biologically cannot see. Next to food their instincts classify as a rotting carcass, and then watched them walk away and called them difficult. We built a multi-billion-dollar industry around their food without ever asking whether their kidneys, designed for a desert they left behind 10,000 years ago, could survive what we were offering them. And when their bodies began to fail, quietly, gradually, with almost no visible warning, until it was too late. We called it a natural consequence of aging. We called it just one of those things. It is not one of those things. The transition from dry food to a moisture-rich, species-appropriate diet, wet food, raw food, any format that brings moisture content closer to what the natural prey of a small desert hunter actually provides is, according to veterinary researchers, the single most significant thing a cat owner can do to protect their cat's kidneys. Not a supplement, not a medication, not a treatment after the fact. The food itself. The moisture inside the food. The simple, ancient act of eating water. Adding a circulating fountain, one that produces sound, that moves, that gives the water an acoustic signature their brain recognizes as safe, can meaningfully increase how often a cat drinks. Moving the water bowl to a different room from the food bowl can remove an evolutionary obstacle that has been silently discouraging hydration for years. These are small changes. They take 10 minutes. They cost very little. And they speak directly to the biology of an animal who has been misunderstood for as long as they have been loved. If you have a cat who is 7 years old or older and still eating dry kibble, there is something specific you can do in the next 60 seconds. Go to where they are right now. Don't call them over, just go to them. Sit on the floor if you can. Let them decide what to do with you. Because your cat does not need a demonstration of the information you just learned. They need to feel, in the next quiet moment between you, that their person is still paying attention. That you showed up. That is the oldest language between a human and a cat, and it requires no translation. Oliver is asleep right now in the center of the bathroom rug, not an inch to the left or the right, always the exact center. And Ethan is in the other room, thinking about switching to wet food. He ordered a fountain 2 days ago. He does not fully understand yet how much this matters. Not really. Not the way the science understands it. He just knows that Oliver is 9 years old, and 9 years old is not forever, and he would very much like to keep getting it right. There are people in the comments section of this video who have already been through what Ethan does not yet know is coming. There are people who caught it in time, and people who did not, and people who are in the middle of it right now. If you have something to share what helped, what you wish you had known, what your cat taught you about the patience of being loved by something that cannot say your name, we would be grateful if you left it below. Subscribe if you want to keep learning how to see them more clearly, because the cats in our lives deserve to be understood as the extraordinary, ancient, perfectly engineered creatures they actually are. Next time, we are going to look at something that happens every single night, in the dark, while you are asleep. Something your cat is doing, not despite your presence, but because of it. And the science behind it is